Okay, well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for your patience on this winter morning. My name is Jeff Pugliese. I'm VP at the Middlesex County Chamber of Commerce. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the 2022 Middlesex Chamber Legislative Breakfast. We did have every intention of returning this important chamber event to an in-person format, but the New England weather had other plans for us. So here we are back on Zoom, but we do very much appreciate your participation and support this morning. Before I turn the program over to Chamber President Larry Mchugh for some important announcements, I want to briefly ask our members and other interested parties to save the dates of Friday, March 18th for the next installment of our 2022 Legislative Leadership Series featuring House Republican leader Vin Candelora, who is with us this morning, and we appreciate that. And also Tuesday, March 29th for another legislative leadership event with Senate Majority Leader Bob Duff. And we also want to thank everyone who supported the kickoff to our legislative event series with Speaker of the House, Matt Ritter, which was held last Tuesday at the Inn at Middletown. And it was a wonderful event, great to be back in person format. So without further ado, I do want to turn the program over to Chamber President Larry Mchugh. Coach.
Thank you very much, Jeff. And of course, Johanna and Haley in the office has done a great job as we continue to pivot from live to virtual and then back and forth. I would strongly like to thank Rob Early, Vice President of State Government Affairs for Comcast, and Comcast for their wonderful support of the Chamber, not only of this event, but 365 days a year. They're a great corporation. I really appreciate it. A couple of events that are coming up to put in your calendar. Gino Auriemma will be speaking on March 14th. That will be an in-person event at the Sheridan up in Rocky Hill. That will be a sold-out event. So we urge people to sign up for that as soon as possible. Also on March 15th, we have a major workshop on the dangers of fentanyl. As you know, this is really this devastated a lot of our community, both young and old, with this terrific drug problem that's going on. So we wanted to do that along with Mchugh and the Chamber. That will be a virtual event. So put those two events on your calendars if you can make it. Also, now it gives me a terrific, really honor to introduce Maureen Westbrook, our chair. As I say that, she's been traveling all over Middlesex County for grand openings, meetings. She's only a phone call away from me. She's just been a superb leader. We've had very, very good membership growth this year of the Chamber. Our activities are going really, really well. And her leadership, as I say, is exemplary for us. So Maureen, take it over. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. And thanks everybody for being here and adjusting to the virtual setting. I think as we all listened to the news and traffic reports this morning, it was the right call, as much as we all love to be in person. But as usual, the Chamber adjusted to what came at them, and we're going to make this work this morning. So thanks to all the members who have joined us. The numbers keep ticking up there on the Zoom there. We're over 70 already. And I think that speaks to how important our members are to our success here, and also how interested they are to hearing from their legislators. And I'm always impressed and grateful that the Chamber gets so many of our delegation to join us for this important event every year. It's clearly that you have an interest and you're available to your constituents, including those in the business community. You're always here to listen. So, and special thanks to Jeff and the legislative member staff, because I know scheduling all of you folks is an incredible challenge, and they managed to make that happen. So thanks for pulling that together. And as always, thanks to Larry and the whole team there at the Chamber. They're really there for our members, and talk about only a phone call away. Whoever needs them, Larry and the team will respond to whatever you got going on. And they're constantly pulling together the events, the training, and the programs for all of us, and there for the business community, exactly as the Chamber is intended to be. And so it's my honor to turn it over to Rob Early. As Larry said, Comcast, a great member of the Chamber here, and Kristen Roberts, who serves on our board, and our incoming chair. And so they have been great contributors to the Chamber, and appreciate your support here this morning. And I'll let you kick off the next part.
Hey, thanks, Maureen. I'm Rob Early, Vice President, State Government Affairs for Comcast. And on behalf of our 2,000 employees, I'd like to publicly thank Jeff and Larry for the great work that they do. And on behalf of one very special employee, Kristen Roberts, who also does some great work with the Chamber, I really want to thank you guys for the opportunity to sponsor this particular event. This event has, for many of us, become like the opening of the legislative session officially. And as some of you may know, my great-grandfather is Dick Coleman, who started Coleman Brothers Shows over 100 years ago. And with things with openings in my family, a lot of times it brings stormy weather. So what I'm hoping is that I'm getting it out of the way for the family for the carnival's opening this spring. So we'll get it over with this morning. And with that, I'll turn the rest of this opening over to Rich. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob. Good morning, everyone. And thanks for the great weather, Rob. I really appreciate it. and actually, you know, it's actually a testament to the staff, to Jeff, Johanna, Larry, Haley, you know, to be able to switch from a live event to this and have such a good turnout. Really, you know, we've gotten that down pretty good, and you guys do a great job. So thanks again. So I know a lot of our legislators, first of all, thank you all for attending this morning. No better way than to share a cup of coffee and some people around the Zoom. You know, I know a lot of you have to jump off a little bit early to attend public health or some other committee meetings. So we're going to get right into some self-introductions. You know, we'll go around the squares here and just give us your name. For those, you know, we have about 70 people on the call. Just give us your name, your territory, your district that you represent, and the committees that you serve on. You know, and yeah, I can probably do this by roll call or just jump on in. Looks like Representative Palm, you're unmuted first, so go ahead.
Great, thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Christine Palm, I'm from the 36, which is Chester, Deep River, Essex, and Haddam. And I serve on the Judiciary Committee, the Government Administration and Elections Committee, and I am Vice Chair of the Environment Committee. And I'm also the Democratic leader of the Internship Committee, which helps our young interns from our colleges get a foothold in politics. And I am thrilled to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Haynes.
Good morning, everyone. Also very happy to be here. Love my friends with the Middlesex Chamber. I represent the 34th District, which is on the other side of the river from Christine Palm, the East Haddam, East Hampton, and small section of Colchester. And I am on the Education Committee, Transportation Committee, and ranking on higher ed.
Great, thanks for being here. Who's next? Go ahead, Senator Cohen, you're next.
Good morning. Thanks, Rich. I'm State Senator Christine Cohen. I represent the 12th district in the state, which it encompasses some of the shoreline, not part of Middlesex. So Brantford, Guilford, Madison, but then North Brantford, Durham, and Killingworth. The 12th soon to be expanded into parts of East Haven and Middlefield as well. I am the Senate Chair of the Environment Committee. I am the Senate Vice Chair of Commerce, and I sit on Finance, Revenue, and Bonding, as well as Children's and Aging. So we have a busy day ahead today.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. Representative Candelora, House Minority Leader, Vin Candelora.
Good morning. Vin Candelora. I represent the 86th District, which encompasses parts of Durham, Guilford, Wallingford, and then all of North Brantford. And it's great to be here this morning.
Thanks for being here, Vin. Representative Carpino.
Morning, everybody, and a special good morning to Johanna, one of my constituents. I represent the good people of the 32nd District, Cromwell and Portland, and I currently sit on Public Health, Government Affairs, and Elections, Reg Review, and Legislative Management.
Great, thanks, Christy. Who are you? Representative Parker.
Good morning, folks. State Representative John Michael Parker from the 101st District, Madison, and about 2/3 of Durham. And I sit on the Education and Environment and Public Health Committees. Happy to be here this morning.
Thanks for being here. Representative Phipps. Morning, Q.
Good morning, everyone. This is State Representative Q Williams. New name, still same state rep.
Congratulations.
Thank you. New and know well and helped develop for all these years. I said if it wasn't for the Chamber's Young Professional Alliance, I think that was one of my earliest young professional development opportunities. So I serve in the 100 districts. If you've ever eaten in Middletown, you've eaten in my district. And I serve as the chair of the Housing Committee and serve on finance, including the subcommittee for bonding and commerce. And I also co-chair the Main Street Work Group.
Thank you, Q. Representative Quinn.
Good morning, everyone. I'm State Representative Michael Quinn. I represent the 82nd District, which is Meriden and Middlefield. Middlefield is switching to the 90th once the redistricting goes through. So the 82nd will just be Meriden next time. And I am on the Judiciary Committee, Public Safety Committee, and also the Vice Chair of Executive and Legislative Nominations.
Thank you for being here this morning. Representative Lesser, I'm sorry, Senator Matthew Lesser.
That's the worst thing anybody says about me today. I'm doing great.
How far back we go, Matt?
I am Senator Matt Lesser. I represent Middletown, Cromwell, Rocky Hill, Newington, and part of Weathersfield. I am the Senate Chair of the Insurance and Real Estate Committee. I'm the Vice Chair of the Human Services Committee. I'm also on the Appropriations Committee, the Judiciary Committee, the Labor and Public Employees Committee, the Energy and Technology Committee. And God, I think I got them all. So hope so. Good to be with you. And Rob, do something about the weather.
Thanks, Matt. And last but not least, Senator Norm Needleman. Good morning.
Good morning. Sorry for running around, had to feed the dog. Jackie's away, so I am doing household duty this morning. Always happy to be here, and I'm the senator from the 33rd District, and I represent a lot of towns. And I chair the Energy and Technology Committee, Vice Chair of Planning and Development, and on Finance, Revenue and Bonding, Transportation, and Commerce. I'm a proud member of the Chamber of Commerce.
Yes, you are. Thank you very much for being here this morning. And finally, I think we found, I think Representative Brandon Chafee has joined us. I see that you're there, Rep.
Yeah, good morning. Sorry I'm late. I was not able to get the time off from work due to the inclement weather here, but I will tune in and do the best I can to answer any questions that come my way. My name is Brandon Chafee. I represent the 33rd District, which covers half of Middletown.
Great. Thanks for being here, and thanks for scheduling yourself to be here. Okay, so like we said, we have to. Some of you have to jump off. I'm going to jump right into our public policy agenda, and I want to specifically thank Dan Moore for co-chairing the legislative committee with me this year. Dan does a great job with Eversource and up there at the Capitol all the time. So thanks again, Dan. In our public policy agenda, we really urge the General Assembly this year to focus on efforts to provide meaningful support to the businesses in the state that really have struggled in the last couple of years, obviously, with the pandemic, and partnering on measures to assist in that recovery and avoid imposing unnecessary taxes or regulatory burdens. Can any of you this morning, comment on what the General Assembly plans to do this session to assist the business community and really support a full economic recovery in Connecticut? We saw coming out of 2008 and 2009, how Connecticut lagged behind the rest of the nation, because of some, the imposition of unemployment insurance taxes and things like that, that really, kept us, anchored in the past. What can we do this time around to assist businesses to kind of get out of this slump quicker? Well, it's a wide open question, so.
I'll kick it off, Rich, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
there's so much to say on this topic, so I'm sure each of us will have a little bit of something to add to it, because obviously, we are still in the pandemic, recognizing that businesses have suffered a long 2 years of this. As a business owner myself, I understand I'm in the restaurant industry, which has its own set of issues. But we're hearing from the manufacturing industry the inability to secure workers in not only manufacturing, but across so many sectors. Childcare industry really hard hit. And so our job right now is to be out there listening to the business sectors and understand exactly what it is that we can do to help. Many committees, including Commerce, and Finance, are hard at work based on what we're hearing and many informational hearings that we've had on this subject, trying to form proposals that will address some of these issues. We're also hearing a lot from the nonprofit sector, who has really stepped up to the plate during these past 2 years, helping provide so many important social services. And, what are we doing to help them? I can tell you, we just raised a concept and had a public hearing on extending the manufacturing apprenticeship tax credit to pass-through entities. That's an important one that we just heard in Commerce with an overwhelming amount of support from the manufacturing industry. We're really taking a hard look at what we can do to really grow different job tax credits and rebate programs. And so there are a couple things coming up as well in the Finance Committee that we'll be taking a closer look. And as I mentioned, the childcare industry as well, which has been really hard hit and really serves as an important cornerstone for us in the business community, not only as businesses themselves, but providing important services to business owners and people who are trying to get to work. And so that will be vitally important as we move forward through the session. So I'll let somebody else jump in as well.
Thank you, Christine. Go ahead, Irene.
Yes, good morning. And this is obviously a great question, and we're very heightened to the things that are going on in the business community and what we need to do for them. One of the things that I think that is so important is to understand the need for using the excess federal funds to shore up the unemployment fund, so that they got depleted over the COVID pandemic. So that's one of the things that I think I'm trying to push and encourage. The other thing is, being on higher ed, I can actually work in what Christine was talking about in regards to apprenticeship programs and vocational schools, and including those in the tax credits and things like that. So these are things that we can hit not only on the commerce side, but also on the educational side, to make those things happen for businesses, because it is one of their biggest issues across all industries and disciplines, is it's just trying to find qualified workers and be able to get them into the slots that are open. It's a wonderful opportunity that we have jobs, and the problem is when we don't have the people trained and ready to go into those jobs, we're going to have such a cliff and a deficit in regards to skilled workers. So we're really trying to push any kind of legislation to push that forward.
Great, thank you, Irene. Anybody else want to chime in on this?
Sure. I just sort of echoing what Senator Cohen mentioned. We've seen staffing shortages in all sorts of industries. On the insurance committee, we're really focused on the healthcare sector, and we've seen huge staffing issues there. I hear locally from Middlesex Hospital and other employers about that. So one thing we have done is suspend state regulations limiting out-of-state providers operating in Connecticut to help bring in nurses and other key staff. And that's currently in effect through April 15th. But I think it's likely that we'll need to extend that further to make sure that our healthcare providers are able to staff appropriately. There are a lot of people facing burnout right now because of the pandemic, and making sure that we can bring in those staffing needs is really critical.
Representative Parker, so you got your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. We've been doing a lot of work through the Arts, Culture, and Tourism Caucus to support that really broad industry, which includes a lot of small businesses, small nonprofits, individual professionals, and then a lot of the sort of anchor hotels and restaurants and businesses in our communities. So that's ongoing work that over the last year was able to make actually unprecedented levels of funding, both through federal relief funds, also some deficit appropriations. So, millions of dollars into arts and cultural organizations, into statewide marketing, into our tourism sectors. This year, there are some exciting conversations going on about continued relief funding, especially for the hotel industry, where folks have had a lot of deferred maintenance and a lot of costs that are racking up. But we're still hoping that those big investments over the biennium in statewide marketing and some of these other initiatives will continue to move forward. I think the work that we're really starting to do now is looking at what happens next year when we potentially approach a cliff of the pandemic relief funds falling off. So at the end of 22 and into 2023, how are we going to try to sustain some of these levels of funding directly into organizations in businesses and individuals through a variety of grant programs. And what that's looking like right now is a working group among industry leaders and legislators so that we can think about a strategic plan for equitable and sustained funding. And that's across, again, arts, culture, humanities, and tourism, which really scoops up a lot of folks across the state. So I know many people in the chamber are probably involved in that one way or the other. And I think this is the year to really make sure we know what to ask for 2023.
Go ahead, Vin. I see you got your hand up too. Excuse my dog barking at the plow.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate, I think what Irene had mentioned about the unemployment compensation fund, and I think I'm speaking for the choir, but I think it's important for all our colleagues to realize, you know, myself as a business owner, we've borrowed upward of almost $1 billion from the federal government to fill in really the overstressed unemployment fund that was caused by the pandemic, not by businesses. And when in 2009, we saw that decline, that same type of use, stress on the system, when the state borrowed the $1 billion, we put it all on the businesses to pay it back. And our recovery, it took over 7 years. It really slowed down our recovery dramatically. I think we were one of the last ones to really come out. And by the time we came out, we got hit with the pandemic. So a lot of the programs that I'm concerned that we're putting money into right now is really going to be short-lived, and we're going to underestimate those or overestimate those benefits and underestimate the benefit of replenishing our unemployment compensation fund. You know, we on a bipartisan basis allocated, I think it was 150 million roughly to that fund. The administration has yet to put the money in. And that's a big problem, because if that money doesn't go in before April 1st, there are more adverse consequences for businesses. The other thing I think we have to look at is the pass-through entity tax, which provides the tax credit, you know, because of the SALT caps that were put on at the federal level. Connecticut alleviated that burden, which really helps middle class and small business owners. That credit has been eroded. So we're not getting the full 100% deduction anymore. And if you talk to your accountants, you know, they're certain to talk to their businesses, you know, the business owners, and saying, you're going to reach a point where this credit doesn't make any sense and you're actually going to be taxed. And so it is a bill that we raised in finance that I think members should take a look at, because it impacts everyone's bottom line, and it shouldn't be used as a vehicle to raise revenue, which is what it was done 2 years ago to in order to bring more tax dollars in, but it actually does impact our businesses.
Thank you, Vin. Anybody else want to chime in at this point? Hey, we can kind of move on. You guys hit, you know, your responses hit basically every aspect of our policy agenda, from tourism to childcare to tax credits. So, you know, I can see that you have a good understanding of where our positions are. So thank you for that. Let's get a drill down a little bit on some of these. You know, so tourism is a huge part of our Chamber of Commerce and in central Connecticut. And, you know, it's obviously been severely impacted by the pandemic, both in terms of, you know, restaurants, but just the people's ability to gather. But, you know, for every dollar that you put into the tourism districts and into tourism in Connecticut, the economy gets $3 back in return. So what's the General Assembly's approach going to be to tourism this coming year? You know, be specific if you can about what you see as, you know, some of the budgetary issues, but also kind of some of the public policy issues and getting people, you know, either unmasked or gatherings or things like that. So I'll open that up to anybody.
I'll jump in. It's Christine Palm. I think, you know, broadly speaking, all of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle were very, very eager, obviously, for everybody to get back to work. And I think we can extend some of those loosening. I hope we will continue to allow, for example, pop-up restaurant tables, you know, on the sidewalks and things like that. There's no question in anybody's mind that especially in our district, tourism is huge. I would like to just mention two bills that I've introduced quickly that have the support of both sides of the aisle. I'm very happy to say. The first is a bill that's on the agenda for today's hearing in the Environment Committee, which has to do with office, creating an office of invasive species. Hydrilla is a huge problem in the Connecticut River. And I think that we along this lower Connecticut River Valley are the canary in the coal mine. This is a plant, an invasive species that's going to go throughout the state before long. And by the time it's on the radar of all the rest of my colleagues, it's going to be too late for their districts. So I know Irene Haynes has expressed a lot of support for this bill. And I want to thank Christine Cohen, who's on this call, for her support and championing of this. And Steve Harding, who I don't think is on, is co-introducing it with me. So it's perhaps the most bipartisan bill I've seen in a long time. It affects the boating industry, which is the $103 million industry, and the tourism dramatically. So I hope that the chamber will support that bill if and when it moves along. And then again, a bill to, I believe we should index the rate of reimbursement for our nonprofits to the actual cost of the goods and services they provide. We've underfunded them and under-reimbursed them for too long. And as Rep. Parker said, we did do an infusion of cash last year, but I think systemically, we need to stop treating our nonprofits as mission-driven do-gooders and think of them as small businesses that have also a bottom line. So I would like to see us permanently create a structure where we can ascertain the value that they have. We throw around a lot of numbers about, and I believe those numbers, by the way, for every one invested, 3 come back, et cetera. But in the profit-making world, there is not the expectation that you will get reimbursed for part of what you provide. And if you're lucky, you'll get an occasional infusion of cash. I would like to see our nonprofits treated fairly all the time, systematically, so that they are never again 461 million in the red as they were since 2006. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else want to chime in on tourism?
Jeff, I want to make a non-legislative point to tourism, if I may. Talking to the operators and the employees in the tourism industry in my district, at this point, they understand the landscape is as dire as it has been, but I really think we need to lead by example. The folks in my district are so happy when we can come out and help promote them, and I think that is very much understated, particularly as the virus is finally making its way out. And after this weekend, I'm hoping there's some warmer weather. I really think that we need to lead by example. We need to be out there. We need to be supporting our local businesses and showing the community that they're open and what's available, because you can have a whole lot of line items in a budget, but you got to lead by example. And I know that I'm preaching to the choir with everybody out there and the 70+ members that are listening, but each one of us legislators on here has such a giant reach with our constituents and other businesses and other members across the state. And I think that if the general public sees that we're out there and we're supporting our local businesses, that's also going to be a long way. And that's by no means a substitute for the legislative support. And I agree with Christine. I sit as a board member on a nonprofit. I understand those budget lines and the struggles that they face daily. But I really think that we need to be out there, because if folks don't remember what's out there and don't see it on a more regular basis, they're not going to get out and they're not going to support really the lifeline of Middlesex.
Thank you, Christy. Representative Parker, then Representative Candelora.
Just to add a few more specifics on the tourism point. So obviously we're in a bit of a transition moment at the state with our new director of tourism, Noelle Stevenson, who came in a few months ago and has been working hard, I think, to get a feel for that office and the different districts across the state. If folks that are members of the chamber haven't yet connected with Noelle, I know she'd love to hear from you and learn about your industry and really get a feel for the folks that she's serving. Her and her team over with arts and culture and say art marketing are developing their plan for next year into the future. Tourism, arts, culture, and tourism in Connecticut are funded through the hotel occupancy tax. And obviously that tax itself has been pretty hard hit over these last few years. So we were able to sort of hold that fund with additional appropriations to what it had been pre-pandemic, even when that number dropped off. And so I think as we see going forward, what those numbers look like, we'll likely need to continue supplementing to keep the historical levels the same around what the hotel occupancy tax had been. So that'll be an important way that just provides all of the funding into the industry. There also are proposals about how else we might fund arts, culture, and tourism. And so there are conversations about gambling tax as we go forward with some new policies that have been put in place. And a few of us have other ideas that really need to be worked through, the industry, and then of course legislators and the agencies over the next couple of months. So I don't know that you'll see a bill this year about new funding for tourism. Again, because we are in a place where we're still working through some of the federal influx. But I think coming into 2023, we want to have a better sense of what it looks like to actually invest properly in statewide marketing and our regional tourism industries. And of course, the office that really propels a lot of that.
Thank you. Go ahead, Vin. You're on mute, Vinny.
Yeah, I hit the hand raise instead. To also just throw out there, I'm sort of in this industry with my sports complex, and it certainly was a rough road for us through COVID. Being shut down upward of 5 months, and it has rebounded. But one observation that I have with tourism, the market has changed a lot. We aren't seeing sort of the indoor activities that we have seen in the past. So our amusement facilities are almost non-existent, but we've seen the sports increase quite dramatically to the point where this year we're probably going to be sold out, which is never happened this early. And I think one of our challenges is going to be is the supply for hotels and housing, because I just think that we are just seeing such an influx of traveling, and that the nature of it is changing. That we're probably going to need for the state to sort of help navigate that and pay attention. On top of the increased costs and the food chain issues, I know that Christine was kind of alluding to that we're all facing. That also sort of impacts, obviously, tourism. So for us, I think it probably is going to be more of a wait and see this year. I think collecting data and seeing what is going to be permanent, what changes in the tourism industry, because I do think, at least in my industry, I am seeing permanency in some of these changes where we are dramatically changing the way we do business. And so that's something I think the state, we really need to talk to our industries to figure out what their needs are going to be a year from now, because I just think it's one area that we have to throw the assumptions out the window and see how COVID has impacted it first.
Agreed. And, that's a good segue to kind of our next issue, is that, our chamber really recommends kind of working, and engaging actively with the legislative assembly and with our constituents as well, and the business community, to really assess what's happened over the last 2 years. There are some changes to the economy and to the workforce that's going to be permanent. And in light of that, can we start assessing some of the impacts of decisions that we made prior to the pandemic, like paid family medical leave and, increase in minimum wage, and topics that were based on certain assumptions and about certain ways that business was conducted. Things have changed a lot, right? And some of these changes are going to be permanent. It appears, however, that there's a lot of bills, as there always are in the Labor Committee, that could affect businesses and come up on an annual basis. And can any of you comment on any of those, and how do you view those in light of these changes that are rapid and some are here to stay? Nobody's taking me up on that one, huh?
No.
Well, no,
Go ahead, Matt. There you go. I knew you were going to jump in, Matt.
Yeah, happy to. And look, I understand there's always a good back and forth. There are trade-offs and different interests at play, and I think it's really important that we hear from the chamber and from the business community about the impact of any proposed labor bills. What happens every year, I've been in the legislature long enough to see this, that there are always a ton of ideas that get proposed. Some of them get out of committee, but then there's a limit to what we can do every year, and I think there's a important conversation that takes place about the timing of proposals. And so, happy to talk about any specific item, but I think that every year, the Commerce Committee proposes bills to help business, and the Labor Committee proposes bills that address that issue. And every year, people in the Insurance Committee propose bills to require insurance to cover things, and that's what those committees do. And then it's the job of legislative leadership to sort of wade through and sort of identify priorities for any legislative session. And your voice on any of these issues, I think, is really important.
Representative Williams, you're next, and then Senator Needleman.
Thank you, Rich. No, that's a great question. And I think about my wife, owner of Small Victories Wellness right here in Middletown, who is not just a I think the fastest growing small group practice in the entire state of Connecticut. And it took about a little over a year for the business to start growing for one reason. And pretty much one reason only. The moment she started to offer health insurance, the application started coming in, and her practice has exploded. So I have consistently thought about what would happen if my wife could do what she does best, right? Which is run her business and provide health and wellness and mental health care in particular to the community, instead of worrying about things like insurance, and how much stronger her business could be. And I think that is indicative of the overall problem that we have in our sort of like industry in general, is that we have a lot of barriers that take away time of business owners of not doing what they do best. And I think this is where we have to start to be more creative and look at the timing of when we propose these solutions, but recognize that the barriers that we do have are systemic. And if we can alleviate those, that is a way forward. And another great example is, I know we are currently in what some would call a staffing shortage. The reason for that is after about a year or so, or a few months of where folks were making more from unemployment than they were working, some would argue that is the thing to do is to start to remove the unemployment protections. What it sounds like to me is that we have to figure out ways that we can make sure that folks can get paid more for working than not working. And these are the sort of conversations that I think we need to have in order to grow our business industry.
Thank you. Senator Needleman.
I'm sorry, most of you know that this is a challenging time in the morning for me. And Jackie's away and I have to take care of the dog. And so I apologize. I'm marginally with it this morning. We had a long public hearing yesterday in energy, and I know Senator Cohen is probably looking forward to her overnighter tonight. Look, there are limits to what the legislature can do and what the government can do here. This market sort of has to ease itself out. We need to cause no more damage. I will tell you that. We need to be careful which bills we try to pass and get out of the way. And as I couldn't agree more than with what Vin said, there's a year of settling out here that has to happen. We have to make sure that as support is lifted, whole industries don't collapse. I know Jackie, my other half, today is running auditions in New York in person for the first time in 2 years. But that theater, sold 35,000 tickets before it was shut down. And we do not know what theater is going to be like this year. We don't know how many people are going to want to come in person. We don't know whether we are going to require masking, go to full seating. Everything is up in the air for certain industries. We need to make sure that whatever support we put in place for mental health pieces, the social service pieces, we should be there and be watching very closely because this is an enormous period of readjustment for businesses. In Essex, I think most businesses did really well, and I've never seen more people on the street. I've never seen more people coming to local businesses. I know we're kind of unusual. We were voted this week the most friendly town in Connecticut, on top of being the best small town in Connecticut. So I don't know if we're if it's just arbitrary that things have been good here, but I drive around my district and restaurants seem to be busy. But help is another problem. And somebody had asked about minimum wage. I find, much as it was a very difficult vote, I find the topic of a $15 minimum wage at this moment in time to be quite quaint, because we can't find people for 15, we can't find people for 16. I think we just put on minimum starting salary for Packers at the end of the line up to $16.50 or $17 an hour. And I would argue about the paid family and medical leave program. No matter what I think about it, it's here. We're going to make sure that it works and it helps the people that it needs. And until we see whether it's financially sound or not, and whether it's really serving the need that we hope, it's here to stay. And when CBIA recently came out with their editorial or their op-ed about how bad it was and how it might fail, it was not helpful, because we should be prospective and look at the bills that are coming down the pike and advocate for the ones that we think are good, and criticize the ones that we don't like. And there are certainly a lot of bills not to like out there. So, but Matt said it better than anybody. A lot of ideas. They all get brought out by committee chairs and committee members, and we'll see what rises to the top, and the battle will then be engaged. I sit here every day. We employ 350 people, and every day is a challenge. So to the business owners, no matter what business you're in, every business is a challenge right now. There are different challenges in different businesses. And again, I'd like to say that there was a magic bullet. There is not, because every business has its own unique challenges. And as an organization like the chambers across the state, they need to be there to support and advocate for businesses. But I'm not sure that there's one magic bullet bill that we can pass that's going to fix things here. There's a tremendous gap in the workforce right now. I think some of that is leading to people starting their own businesses, which I think is going to be great. But I think in the meantime, the shortage in labor is astounding. So training, up training, up educating, going into the world of education and making sure that we no longer focus exclusively on four-year liberal arts degrees as the path to heaven. There's a lot of other jobs out there, and a lot of them pay more than you make with a four-year liberal arts degree. So we need a cultural shift here, and our educational system in Connecticut needs to have more job training. More people need to be convinced when they go out of high school or even in high school, what they're learning should help them at least direct them to the job market somewhere. Because education beyond high school costs a fortune. Even high school costs a fortune, but it's socialized to all the taxpayers. So we need to make sure that we're educating people for the jobs of the future. And I always say that I'm convinced, I'm absolutely convinced my plumber makes more money than my primary care doctor. That should be a lesson for kids getting out of school. Go for some training and you have a good chance of making a good living, because no matter what AI we have, we're going to have pipes that leak like mine did this morning. And the plumber came at 7 o'clock. So,
had a full day, Norm.
And
it's not even 9 o'clock yet.
I know. Thanks a lot. Sorry.
Well, thank you. And, thank you. And, I think we are in lockstep with, the do no harm and let's see how this all shakes out kind of mentality. That really is where we are at as a business community as well. But you also, I'll pick up your lead on infrastructure and the pipes. There's a lot of money that is available and that has been put into the state's coffers. And we know Commissioner Boughton is the kind of the point person for the Lamont administration when it comes to the deployment of those funds. You know, infrastructure plays such a critical role in everything that we do, as Norm just mentioned. You know, what opportunities do you see, you know, going forward, you know, this year with those funds to assist in infrastructure development, whether that be, you know, the state's utilities, power generation industry, cable industry, all the important, you know, infrastructure that's out there? Where do you see the use of those funds best suited? Norm, I'll put it back to you, Norm. Your hand's up and you're just talking about pipes.
I actually meant to mute myself, but I'll take a shot at this. I had I don't know if Irene, if it's in one of the towns we share, but I had the oddest email that all this infrastructure funding that's coming in is going to have to be spent. I mean, there's work that's going to have to be done, and there's a massive shortage of qualified and skilled people and a mass exodus out of all the state agencies because of the cliff in June. So this engineering firm emailed me complaining that DOT was trying to hire people away from their engineering firm, and they're going to be needed as part of the process. I am very concerned that we may not have the people to actually spend the money efficiently and effectively. So again, this is a market-driven thing, but we have thrown a lot of money at the system, and that requires spending. And that, you know, the intent was to spur spending, and some of that money has spurred inflation in a bad way. So we're in a very precarious economic time. We need to get the work done. We all know there's a lot of road work out there, a lot of bridge work, a lot of infrastructure work, but we need the people to do that work, and that's not going to be as easy as it sounds.
Vin, you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, I think Senator Needleman made a really good point. And I think it expands across even with our nonprofits, is as the state is seeing retirements, they're hiring away from the private sector that is going to be needed. So that is something I think we're going to have to keep an eye on. I do think that Connecticut should be moving toward a transit authority to help work at prioritizing where these funds go. One of my frustrations over the last 15 years is that we really just sort of, I think the transportation dollars sometimes can be political. We don't put money that is most efficient, like focusing on the railway from New Haven to New York is such an economic engine that we should be taking a look at. And I think we also need to do a cost benefit analysis. You know, so much of our transportation is subsidized by the state. I know public transportation, it will always be that way, but hitting that sweet spot, because obviously when we build something, we have to keep paying for it. And that has caused our transportation fund really to become insolvent. And I think, you know, to the last point of that, last year we had passed the truck tax, thinking that we would need that for the special transportation fund. Right now, the plan for the federal money is to bond as its match. We don't need that truck tax, and I really think we should at least delay it, at the very least at a time when we're seeing inflation of goods and products that are being brought into Connecticut. I think that tax is only going to add to that. So I'd like to see sort of this money being spent through a more collaborative process of a transit authority. Hopefully Commissioner Boughton will sort of do that. I think he has his work cut out for him, but there are some great opportunities, I think, for Connecticut, and our rail should be our focus, in my opinion.
Thank you, Vin. Anybody else want to comment on infrastructure? We have a kind of a follow-up question from the people that are online. It says business units have to leverage the use of technology and its application since the start of the pandemic. Any plan to support business units to upgrade their technology? So in other words, helping businesses upgrade their technology and maybe their infrastructure that way. Representative Chafee, your hand is up.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to comment on the infrastructure spending. overall. I mean, I think that we're in a position with the federal funding that's coming in. It's really a once in a lifetime investment we're going to be able to make. And to Vin's point about our rail line, you know, we have certain critical infrastructure pieces in this state that are huge economic drivers, whether it's the rails or the airport or even our highway system. And I think I am concerned about the understaffing at the DOT. And I really would like to see a strategic planning unit come up with what's the best way to spend this money to make sure that it's going to have a long-term positive economic impact in the state. So like I said, the amount of money that's coming in, it's probably going to be a once in a lifetime investment, at least in the near term. Beyond that, I know the state invested a lot of money in the past in the fiber optic network to link municipalities, fire stations, schools, things of that nature. I think we really need to take a look into building that network out and allowing businesses and even residents to use that for their internet service provider. If we could have the fastest internet in the country at low cost, I think that would be a huge economic driver into the future.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Haynes, your hands up.
Perfect segue from my colleague. One of the infrastructure initiatives, I believe, coming from the feds is broadband access. And that is something that I think everybody needs to address and put in your radar. You know, local businesses, towns, municipalities. I mean, we're doing it in my town in East Haddam, putting together a feasibility study to make sure that we're queued up on the broadband line, because that is something that those infrastructure dollars coming from the feds is going to be earmarked for. So I would encourage business units who have any play with their towns and their cities to talk to their legislative committees there and see about, you know, getting queued up to be in that line, because again, that's going to be, I think, as my colleague Representative Chafee just said, that is definitely going to be something that will help the businesses, and with the infrastructure dollars to build out the broadband lines, that will help tremendously to get everybody moving and shaking. So I think that's one thing that we can definitely look at.
Yeah, thank you very much. The investments in infrastructure are absolutely an economic driver. And I know UConn did a study of that maybe last year when we were starting to wrestle with, you know, kind of the use of these funds. So I would recommend you, I think it's available online and we could probably look it up and get it circulated as well. But that's absolutely true. All right. I don't see any other questions in the chat. Senator Cohen had to leave, and I know a couple of you also have to get going. It's just approaching 9 o'clock.
Rich, we do have one, sorry to interrupt, but we do have one from the Q&A portal.
Oh, okay.
That I think is important. I'm happy to share it if you don't have access to it. It
Go ahead,
deals with the session and access to our elected officials. So I'll read it directly. Given the governor's recent actions with respect to indoor mask requirements, do you anticipate we will be able to access the LOB during the legislative session, and any other thoughts on that matter with respect to public participation and direct access to legislators in the upcoming session? Any thoughts on that front from our delegation?
I'll just jump in on a little bit because I'm part of those conversations. And I think, you know, from the House perspective, we understand the public hearings right now because of, you know, we're hearing, you know, upward of 250 people today in one hearing, that it's difficult to hold a public hearing in that building for crowd control purposes. So the public hearings, I think, likely would continue on Zoom. People like that access. I will just throw out there that it's taken a different tenor where we are seeing global participation in Connecticut's system. And I think that if this continues, we have to have a conversation to make sure that our Connecticut residents, their voices are able to be prioritized, which I think has been a little problematic. But we are looking to try to have the committee meetings open and have them in person for the JF process, because it's very difficult to be able to, amend bills, negotiate bills, and vote them out doing this virtually. So we're hopeful that come March, we're going to be able to do some of that in person. And it's not settled yet, but we should have a final, agreement before March 1st on what the rules are going to be going forward.
Good to know. Thank you. Anybody else want to dive into that one? We've got a couple that are popping up here in the chat function again. Speaking of infrastructure needs in the state, can anyone else speak to the priority of investing in transit-oriented communities in our state to help address the housing crisis? By helping people gain access to affordable housing where our infrastructure already exists would be a significant economic driver. Anybody want to comment on transit-oriented districts or communities?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Norm.
I saw Representative Quinn raise his hand, but just take a shot at it. On planning and development, it's one of the main issues that people want to come to some resolution on. I actually think that the devil's in the details on this one. Don't want to jam these down communities' throats, but there's a real justification for doing this. There's a lot of hype around it, but in principle, transit-oriented districts are a good thing, and they will create opportunity. And I hope that we find some resolution like we did last year on the housing bill. These are not meant to be racially charged issues, but they ended up being racially charged issues, and they shouldn't be. These are economic issues. People need to have opportunity to live. Kids in our community, with all the affordable housing that we built, it's all mostly being used by people that are teachers and workers. It's workforce housing as much as anything. Transit-oriented districts are a proven way to help economic growth, and we should try to find a balance between jamming them down people's throats and convincing people that they're a good thing.
Thank you, Senator. Representative Quinn, followed by Representative Williams.
Yeah, thank you. I'll chime in on this because Meriden is doing this, and it has worked for Meriden. We've got a new train station. We've got several new apartment complexes that have developed around the train station. As part of our flood control initiatives, we created the Meriden Green, and all of that is done under the transit-oriented district. So, I agree with what the senator said about not jamming it down people's throats, but I think people in other towns should see how it has worked in towns like Meriden. One thing that we do need to do, and I've had this discussion with nominees to the transit board on my other committees, is making the rail more convenient. An example I use of that is you can get on a Metro North train in New Haven and go right to Yankee Stadium for a baseball game. And at the end of that game, the trains are there waiting and they take you back to New Haven. But if you live anywhere north of New Haven, you don't have that option because the CT rail just doesn't run late enough to accommodate a night game. So while I am all in favor of public transportation and rail in particular, it's got to be made convenient, because if it isn't convenient, people aren't going to use it and you're going to lose that investment.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Williams.
Thank you, Rich. And it's another great question. And this is where it's very important to be able to define terms. So we use the word transit-oriented development. What does that mean? Typically, when we talk about that, that's close access to jobs, to education centers, to literally transit, or what I would probably call that is the way that most cities are designed, or most towns are designed all throughout Europe and all throughout America, as in the way to design communities in order for people to move around the most easiest. That's what we're talking about. So I give the best example, which is just get the correct name real quick. Montgomery Mill. Montgomery Mill is in Windsor, Connecticut, or Windsor Locks. I think it's Windsor Locks or Windsor, maybe South Windsor. And it's a renovated mill. So the environmental impact was amazing, near LEED certified, mixed income. So it has affordable units, immaculate design, community space, all throughout the entire regional area within a 5-minute, 10-minute walk. Businesses have been booming. There's a Chinese food restaurant right across the street that said, because this apartment complex was built, it saved his restaurant, right? If you try to overlay the requirements that were needed to have Montgomery Mill throughout the entire 95 corridor, throughout the entire Metro North stops, you cannot recreate Montgomery Mill near any of the stops, not one. There would be requirements on parking. There would be requirements on actually redoing mills. There would be requirements on the number of floors one can have. So here's a project that everyone agrees is a best practice project, and you can't do it anywhere on the Metro North line. So when we talk about why this idea of like jamming it down people's throats, here is something that everyone agrees is great and would love to have in their communities, and we can't do it anywhere in the state of Connecticut on the Metro North line. There's a disconnect. There's a serious disconnect. And then when you start to ask more questions about what's like, why is transit-oriented development so needed? I think about the baby boomer parents that want their kids to come back and live in their neighborhoods or live in their towns. Where can you live affordably in a lot of these areas? I think about my own family. For my mother-in-law, she currently lives in Greater Kansas City. She wanted to live in Connecticut. Vastly different expense and housing expense to be able to go from Greater Kansas City to Connecticut. And since we have such a high demand for housing in Connecticut, the only way to fix this issue is to create a larger supply. So that has to start with, first and foremost, letting developers do what they do best, which is develop, right? And doing it where people want to live. And this is where we have to start to have some real honest conversations about what we're really talking about. Because the fact of the matter is, if you ask whether it's any of my fellow colleagues and legislators or a lot of the folks in our communities, where could their grandparents live? Where could their children live? Or if they wanted to downsize, where could they live? So on and so forth. Everyone would agree it would be incredibly difficult to find housing at all budgets. So it is long overdue to look at this and to figure out how do we get developers to do what they do best, which is develop.
Well, I'm sure we would have a group of developers at our chamber that would love to work with you on getting transit-oriented districts put together, and we will reach out to you and get that input. Thank you very much.
One quick thing, and it's just, I think to the previous question about how to get in contact, I was going to encourage everyone to email directly. I wouldn't use the form letters as much. I think those aren't the most effective. But just sending a quick email, or what I always say is to give a phone call. A lot of our aides and clerks are on the younger side, so getting a phone call is pretty brand new to them. We all are used to texting. And with that said, I will also make sure that I leave my direct cell phone number for everyone. So if you would like to get in touch with me, you can always find me the best way that way.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Yep, I think we're going to wrap it up today. I know a number of you have other committee meetings to attend this morning. Thank you so much for being here this morning. It's really a testament to your representation of all of us here in our community. And thanks again to Coach Mchugh and Johanna and Jeff and my co-chair Danny Moore for putting this all together today. Coach, we'll give it off to you for the last word. Thanks again for everybody attending today.
Rich, fantastic job, and always proud of the job that you do for us. And again, to our legislators, thank you so much. It's been a real joy to work with each and every one of you. We might have different opinions on different articles, but I can tell you one thing. Each and every one of you are committed to making Connecticut a better place to live and work for all of its citizens. And I applaud you for that. Everyone have a great day. As you know, the sun always shines in Middlesex County. I think it might come out about 4 o'clock today, but have a great weekend, everyone. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.